The UK's historic vote to leave the European Union is the start, and not the end of the exit process. The political and the economic impacts of this decision will play out over time, but here's what we know. The first casualty of the referendum is David Cameron, who has already announced that he will step down as Prime Minister at the October Conservative Party conference. This will open the path for a new leader to be elected, most likely former Mayor of London Boris Johnson, who will then be charged with creating a new framework for discussions with the European Union. This framework will outline two parallel negotiations regarding both the UK's withdrawal from the EU and the new trade agreement. The tone and eventually terms of the UK's negotiations will need to reflect the majority view of Parliament, rather than just the narrow view of the Leave campaign. The House of Commons, as it currently stands, has a majority of pro-Remain members. Previous statements by these MPs indicate a preference to keep Britain inside the EU single market. Staying inside that market would mean Britain would have to keep its borders open to EU workers and continue to contribute to the EU budget. And Prime Minister Cameron's post-referendum statements made clear that the interests of all the UK, including Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales, will need to be taken into account. The Leave campaign have already adopted a conciliatory stance, stating that they want a friendly relationship with the European Union, but will probably struggle to reconcile their referendum platform with the British body politic. The new government's proposed framework will be debated and require the approval of Parliament, and the process could continue through the rest of the year. We would expect significant debate before a consensus is reached. The December 15th European Council Summit is probably the most likely target date for the UK to formally invoke Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty. The best-case scenario would see the terms of withdrawal concluded within a 2-year period. The timetable for an alternative trade agreement, however, seems to present a greater challenge and could take significantly longer. There's a scenario where the UK could exit without a free trade agreement, but would be subject to the much more unfavorable terms under the World Trade Organization, the WTO. This is clearly the worst case and the least likely scenario. We'd expect, however, a preference to exit under a negotiated arrangement, most likely beyond this most favored nation status provided by the WTO. And the more closely the arrangement is in accepting EU requirements regarding free movement of people and EU budget contributions, the more quickly an agreement could be reached. This would most likely require the UK to stay in the European Free Trade Area, replicating the position of Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein. But given the polemic issue of migration, this could be too high of a hurdle to overcome. Negotiating a bespoke bilateral agreement, similar to Switzerland, would seem a very likely option. But this could drag on for years and, based on previous EU trade negotiations, could take the better part of a decade. Our view is that this third scenario is the most likely one, where a bilateral trade agreement could safeguard single market access and provide a fudge on migration with some autonomy in the UK while largely maintaining the status quo of free movement of people. The likely timeline for UK exit will revolve around the October Conservative Party conference. That should give them plenty of time for debate to officially trigger Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty at the December 15th European Council. 2 years are assigned for negotiation of the withdrawal, but given the complexity of a trade agreement, we may see this run well past 2020.